In 2003, my family and I, we moved from South Africa to Australia. And I was 11 at the time, and I was in year 5. And so I started going to the local primary school there. And I remember the first week being there, I laid eyes on this girl, and her name was Michaeli. She was tall, yeah, that's what I thought, tall, brown hair, and green eyes. And when I saw her, I'm like, Lord, this is the girl for me. This is the girl that I want to be with. And so I made it my mission the 2 years that I was going to be at that school to make her my girlfriend, right? So we became really good friends, right? I was hanging out with her at lunchtime. When it rained and was wet weather, it was the best because her class and my class, we'd go into the same classroom together. And so her friends weren't with her, so, I could have her all to myself. I even did after-school gymnastics just to hang out with her. Now, a picture's going to come up of me when it was in year 5, right? Does that person look like he can do gymnastics? In no way, shape, or form was I flexible. But I was chasing this girl's love. I wanted to be accepted by her. I wanted to be loved by her. But then a very sad day came. I remember going to school this morning, and I found out that she was going out with this other guy named Luke. And my heart was completely shattered, right? Now, Luke wasn't just any other guy. He was blonde hair, blue eyes, had abs. I mean, who has abs in year 5, right? But this guy did. And my heart was shattered, had that sick feeling in my gut. And so I went home that day. There was some food there, but I went straight to my bedroom. And there's something wrong when I miss a meal, right? Because that guy up there never missed a meal. And that was my first experience of being rejected, and many more would come later on. But all of us can relate to that in some level, right? At some level. We're all longing for people to love us. We all long to belong at some level. You might be chasing that boy or girl who you have a crush on. Some of us, especially for us immigrant kids, we're trying to get the acceptance of our parents, right? We want to get those good marks, get a good career so we'd be loved by them, accepted by them. And some of you, it might just be with your friends. You do certain things, listen to certain music, dress a certain way because you want to be accepted by your friends. We want to be accepted. We want to belong. But I'm sure you've come to realize, as I have, that in this world, as we chase after these different loves, there is no love that can completely satisfy us. This gap that we're trying to fill in our hearts, there's no love in this world that can fill that gap. I mean, even the good things that we have in life, even the good love that we have in life, right? I just celebrated my 6-year wedding anniversary at the start of this month, right? Picture of my wife will come on the screen. Yeah, I'm punching, hey. Someone always has to comment on a photo, you're punching, mate, when I put that up. But even though I love Holly so much and I would do anything for her, our love still isn't perfect. I don't treat her how she deserves to be treated at times. She doesn't treat me the way I treat me well at times either. And we both fail at loving each other. See, as much as we try and chase after perfect love in this world, we always end up getting let down. But what if I told you that there was a love that would never let you down? A love that you don't have to earn, but a love that is freely given to you. A love that is assured. A love that it doesn't matter if you think you're unlovable, and despite what you've done, you're assured of this love. A love that isn't temporary, but lasts forever. And in this story, Jesus shows us that love. He shows us that that is exactly what God's love is like. But he also shows us that all of us have rejected this love. See, Jesus often told parables, told stories in the Bible because he was trying to communicate to the people around him what God's character was like, what God was truly like. And so in this story, he's showing us what God's love is really like. Because all of us have assumptions of who God is. And so Jesus wanted to make sure that we really know what God is like. And in this story, he introduces us to 3 characters, a father and his 2 sons. The father in this story represents God. And the two sons represents two different types of people, two different ways that people reject God's love. And as we go through this story tonight, I want you guys to ask this question: which son am I more like? As you hear about the different things that they did, as you hear about how they rejected God's love, I want you to ask, which son are you? Maybe even write it down on a paper and think about it. So firstly, let's look at this younger son. Now, this younger son represents all of us who think that life would be better off without God, that God doesn't know how to truly enjoy life, and so we need to kick him out of our life so that we can have fun, so that we can enjoy life without him. And so let's get into the shoes of this younger son. The story opens with this younger son coming to his dad, and he knows that when his dad dies, that he's going to get an inheritance. And so he says to his dad, "Dad, I want my inheritance now." So can you see what he's asking his dad, right? He's saying only when his dad dies will he get his inheritance. And so he's saying to his dad, "Dad, I wish you were dead right now just so I could have what you have and go and enjoy my life. I don't want to wait around for you to drop dead. Give me what's coming my way now." Can you imagine speaking to your parents like that? If I spoke to my mum like that, she'd backhand me, get the wooden spoon out, and she'll start beating me with the wooden spoon. Right? And that's exactly what the people listening to this story thought would happen. There's no way that this father would give this son what he's asking for. And that's exactly how we would react. When someone rejects our love, we want to retaliate. That's what I'm looking for. We want to retaliate. And that's exactly what the people were expecting this father to do. And Jesus shows us that this father wasn't like that. Instead, the father gives this son what he asked for. And so this son takes his father's wealth and he goes to a faraway country and he blows it on whatever he wants. He goes out and he has a good time, enjoying life the way that he knows best how to enjoy it. But Jesus tells us that eventually his bank account gets lower and lower and lower, and eventually all the money runs out. And there's a famine in the land, and Jesus says that this guy literally has hit rock bottom. He goes and finds a job and ends up feeding pigs. And what Jesus is trying to show us that this is the lowest anyone can sink in this society. This is the lowest anyone can get. And so while he's there feeding the pigs, he thinks back to his home. And he remembers that even the people that work for his dad, even they had a better life than he did right now. And so he says this, he comes up with a plan and says, "I'll go back to my father's house and say to him, I have sinned against heaven and I have sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." And so he starts this journey back home. And you can imagine him rehearsing the lines along the way because he doesn't know what acceptance he's going to get when he goes back. You know, in year 10, mum and dad, they went away and it was the first time they left me alone, right? And the good son I am, I ended up throwing a party while they were away. And this was one of the parties that completely got out of hand. There were people in the house that I didn't know. Mum and dad, they have this cream carpet. That carpet was destroyed. We had chairs that were broken. And when mum walked in that door, and just the look in her eyes, I thought that was the last day of my life. And that's exactly what the people listening to Jesus tell the story, that's exactly how they thought this father was going to react. Because that's exactly what the son deserved. But instead, Jesus says when the father saw this son a long way off, he started running to him. He ran to him and threw his arms around him and gave him kisses. The people hearing this would have been shocked. And I don't want you to miss the point here, right? Middle Eastern men back then, there was no way that they would run. Children might run, mothers might run after the kids, but the head of the house, the patriarch of the family, he was someone who was going to be held in honor. Someone who was meant to be respected. To run as a Middle Eastern man was shameful. But can you see what Jesus is trying to show us here? This father's love for his son was so great that he didn't care what other people thought about him. He was willing to be shamed because of how much he loved his younger son. And when he gets to his younger son, he gets out, he tells his servant, bring the best robe, which should have been his robe. Get the family ring, a ring that only could belong to family members, and he gives it to his son. See, Jesus is trying to show us that even though this son had rejected the father brings him back into the family, not because of anything the son has done, but because the father loves the son. Only because of the father's love for this son could he be accepted back into the family. People listening to this, they would have been shocked. The son deserved to get banished. He deserved to get rejected. Now I want to ask you guys a question. Do you see yourself in the shoes of this younger son? Because Jesus has given us a picture that this younger son represents all of us here tonight who think that life will be better off without God. All of us who think that God's love is boring, God's love isn't enough, so we have to go and try and find love in relationships. We have to go try and find love in a certain lifestyle, try and find love by impressing other people. See, we think that to truly enjoy life, to truly have fun, we need to kick God out of it. And I identify with this younger son. I was like a younger son, right? I grew up going to church all my life. Went to church on Sundays, went to Sunday school. I knew all the Bible answers, knew all the Bible stories. But when I was 14, I clearly remember that I made the decision that I didn't want to miss out anymore. I wanted to go and have fun with my friends. And I did exactly that. I went out and I did the partying, did the drinking, did all of that. And I'm not going to stand here and say to you that I didn't enjoy it when I was doing it, right? Jesus doesn't say that when the younger son was out there spending the money doing what he wanted. He didn't say that the younger son wasn't having fun. He was probably having fun. I had fun doing what I was doing before. But the point of the story is Jesus is saying that all of those things eventually come to an end. Just like it came to an end for that younger son, just like how it came to an end for me, all the other things in life which we seek out, which we seek love from is eventually going to come to an end. And just like this younger son, Jesus says, when everything else around you comes to an end, you're going to be left with nothing. You're going to be left in the dirt and empty. Jesus is calling you to come back to God. Stop rejecting his love and come back to him. But maybe you're thinking, well, how can I be sure that I'll be accepted? You don't know what I've done. But see, that's why Jesus gives that little bit of information that this son, he wanted to make up for what he'd done. He'd prepared the speech of how he was going to pay the father back. And that's what Jesus is meaning by this, is that when we come to God, God accepts us because of his love for you. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done. God accepts you back into his family because of his love for you. So I want to ask you, are you rejecting God's love like this younger son? Do you think that life will be better off without him? Jesus wants you to see that there is no love in this world, no love out there that can compare to God's love for you. Now, often when we hear this story, we stop at the younger son and we focus on him. But there's the elder son in the story, the second half of it. And Jesus wants us to show us that there's actually a second way in how we reject God's love. And we see that through the life of the elder son. Now, although the elder son in the story, that he didn't break any rules, he too rejects the father's love, but he does it in a different way. And we see this in his response when he hears that his younger brother had come back, right? He's been out in the field all day, working hard, doing whatever the father told him to do. And when he comes home that night, he hears that there's this party going on. There's people, they're laughing, there's music. And so he's wondering to himself, what's going on? And he calls one of the servants and he says, can you tell me what's going on? And the servant says to him, your younger brother has returned. Your father was so excited that he'd returned that he's throwing this massive party because the son that was once lost is now found. And this is where Jesus reveals the real heart. He exposes the heart of the elder brother. This brother is furious that the father would do such a thing. Because if anyone deserved a party to be thrown for them, it was the elder brother. Why? Because he's always done the right thing. He's never disobeyed the father. He's always kept all the rules. And so he's out there having this tantrum, sulking. And the father comes out of the party and pleads with him, my son, come into the party. And this is where we see how the elder son rejects the father's love. He refuses to go into the party because he thinks that he deserves better. See, just like the younger son, this elder son has rejected the father's love. He wasn't being obedient and listening to the father and working hard and keeping all the rules because he loved the father. He was only doing these things because he also just wanted what the father had. And this was his way of how he was going to get control of what the father had. See, when we look at the younger son, we can understand that he's done the wrong thing, right? He doesn't hide the fact that he doesn't love the father. He openly shows people that he doesn't want anything to do with the father. But when it comes to the elder son, it's a little bit harder to see what he's done wrong. Because on the outside, he looks obedient. He's doing all the right things. He's working hard. But Jesus is showing us that when it came down to it, his heart was just the same as the younger brother. He didn't love the father. He only loved the father's things. He just went about a different way of getting what he wanted. Now, the reason why Jesus includes the elder brother in this story is because a lot of the people listening to Jesus at the time were religious people. People that went to church, people that knew the Bible really well, people that could pray really well. But all these people who were doing these things, not because they loved God, but they rather just loved what they could get out of God. See, if you're someone who calls yourself a Christian, someone who is here every Friday at youth, someone who knows your Bible really well, someone who knows how to pray, someone who leads people, someone who always does what is right, Jesus is saying that you're the type of person who is most in danger of becoming like an elder brother. Now, I just want to clarify, Jesus is not saying that knowing the Bible is wrong. Jesus is not saying that praying to God and loving others and listening to God is wrong. The Bible calls us to do these things, but what Jesus is challenging us through this story is the motivation behind why you do those things. Do you do those things? Do you listen to God and you're obedient to God just so that you can say to him when you stand before him at heaven, I've listened to you all my life, here's all the things that I've done, and that's why you should let me in? Because the only reason you listen to God is because when you pray to him, you want him to answer your prayers. You want him to give you a good life. See, when someone has the attitude of an elder son and things don't go their way, they get angry because they think they deserve better. And in the elder son, we see that they end up rejecting the father's love. They end up rejecting God's love because they think they deserve better. See, in some ways, it's more dangerous to be like the elder son than it is to be the younger son. The younger son, at least when he went and he stuffed up, he knew that he screwed up. He knew that he needed to go back to the father. But look at this elder son. When the father comes out to him, he still doesn't recognize that he's done anything wrong. When we rely on all the good things that we do, just like this elder brother, it's hard to see that we also have rejected God's love. It's hard to see that we too don't deserve to enter heaven. And that's why I think Jesus put this banquet at the end of this parable, right? Because often when Jesus described heaven, he described it as this big banquet, a party where God and his children are there celebrating. And in the story, we see here that the father is in the banquet, the younger son is in the banquet, but who's left outside? The elder brother. And he's left outside not because he's done the wrong thing, but because he thinks that he's done the right thing. And he wants to get into the party on his own terms. So I want to ask you guys this question, or a couple of questions. If you think that you're better than others, you're probably on the road to being an elder brother. If you find it hard to accept that you've done anything wrong, you're probably on the road to becoming like an elder brother. When things don't go your way and you get angry because you don't feel like you deserve this should be happening to you, you're on the road to becoming an elder brother. And if you think that you're going to enter heaven because of all the good things that you've done in this life, you're like an elder brother. You don't love God for who he is, but only what he can give you. See, both these sons, they give us a picture of how we all can reject God's love. The youngest son, we go out and we try and find love everywhere else in the world. The elder sons, they pretend to love God just to get what they want from God. Both these sons, they don't deserve the Father's love. Both these sons deserve to get rejected, but we see that Jesus is showing us the Father reaches out in love to them. All of us here don't deserve to enter heaven. We all deserve to be rejected by God. But instead, God reaches out to us in love. And the way he does that is through his perfect Son. You see, on the cross, when Jesus died for us, Jesus was rejected for the elder son. He was rejected for the younger son. Jesus got the rejection that we deserve so that we can get the love that we don't deserve. Let me say that again. Jesus on the cross got the rejection that we deserve so that we can get the love that we don't deserve. So when we look at Jesus dying on the cross, we get a picture of the Father running to his youngest son down the road. When we look at the cross, we get a picture of the Father coming out of the banquet and pleading with his eldest son to come into the banquet. See, when we truly understand the story, when we truly understand who God is and how great his love, you can't walk away from here tonight and not know that God loves you. You can't walk away from here tonight and not know how amazing God's love is for you, how unchanging it is. And if you ever doubt God's love, if you ever doubt that he will accept you, look at the cross. It's the greatest display of love that this world has ever seen. No other love in this world can compare to that. And so maybe tonight God is showing you that you might be like this younger son and that you've been rejecting his love. Or maybe he's shown to you that you're actually like the elder son. You've just been pretending to love him, pretending to be a Christian just because you think it's the right thing to do, just because you want to get stuff out of God, but you don't actually love him for who he is. Well, tonight what Jesus is doing, he's saying he's calling you to stop rejecting God's love. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pray. And if you've realized that you're like the younger son or if you're like the elder son, if you want to stop rejecting God's love, I want you to pray this prayer with me. And know that when you come to the Father, when you come to God, you won't be met with rejection, but you'll be met with love and accepted back into his family. Let me pray. Father, we are so sorry that we have rejected your love. We're so sorry that we go and we try and find love in all other places in this world. We're so sorry that sometimes we pretend to love you just to get things out of you. But Lord, I thank you that you reached out to us, that you sent your son Jesus to show us that even though we rejected your love, you never stopped loving us. And through him, we can be forgiven, we can be accepted. And so tonight, I'm sorry for rejecting you. I want to give my life, give my all to you. And I thank you that I can approach you in confidence, knowing that I won't be rejected, but will be accepted in love because of what you've done for me through Jesus. Amen.